Hello everyone. So today I'm going to explain you about gear. What is a gear? A gear is a machine or a device which is used for the transmission of power from one shaft to another shaft. So a gear is a device which is used in between one shaft and another shaft for good power transmission. So basic work of this gear is to transfer power from one shaft to another shaft. Suppose we have this shaft and this is a motor shaft, and another shaft, and this is our shaft which we will get work from. Now we want to run this shaft from this shaft. So to transfer the rotating motion of this shaft to this shaft, we will use gear in between these two shafts. So gear is a device which is used for the transmission of power from one shaft to another shaft. So one is to transmit power. Now gear have another use such as, suppose we have one shaft, this shaft, and another shaft is placed very near to this shaft. Now this power transmission can also be done, or we have many ways to transfer power, such as we can also use a pulley or chain system to transfer the power. But gears are special devices. They are used because the one reason is that if the distance is not very far for which we want to transfer power, then we use these gears. Now if the distance is not very far, then gears are the best choice to transfer power from one shaft to another shaft. In this case, where the distance between the two shafts is not very large, the use of belt drive or any chain drive is not helpful, or it is not useful, because such arrangement would not be possible very easily. Instead, use of gear work very good in such power transmissions. If the distance between one first shaft and the second shaft is large, then at those places the use of pulley or chain system is useful. But in process or in mechanisms where the shaft are very near to each other, at that places, for the transmission of power or for the transmission of motion, the rotating motion of one shaft to the other, we use gear. So second use of gear is the distance. That is, for small distance we use gear. Another is the speed control. That is, third point is speed control. How? Suppose this is one gear, and we have another shaft. This is one gear attached to one shaft. This is the axis. This is the shaft on which this gear is attached. Now if we have another shaft and we want to increase or decrease the speed of this shaft, then the use of gear is best, because we can have a smaller or a larger gear depending upon the type of variation we want to have on these shafts. This is first shaft and this is second shaft. Now this gear help us to increase or decrease the speed of these two shafts by the use of gear. Suppose this gear is running at some speed x, at some RPM x, and if we want to have more RPM of this shaft, then this gear will be of less diameter than this gear, and this y RPM will be more than the x rpm. So first shaft have one gear, another shaft have another gear. Now if this gear is smaller than this gear, then the speed will increase. But if we want to decrease the speed, then the use of this gear will be bigger. That is, the diameter of this gear will be larger than the diameter of this gear. This is called the driving gear, and this is called the driven gear. If the driven gear is of larger diameter than the driving gear, then the speed will decrease. But if the diameter of this driven gear is less than the diameter of the driving gear, then the speed will increase. So to control the speed, we use this gear. Also, it helps to reduce vibration. Another point of using gears is to reduce vibration. How? Suppose if we are using belts, this is one pulley and this is another pulley. If we are using belt between these two pulleys, then these pulley will definitely have some vibration, and due to these vibration the efficiency will get decreased, or the power transmission will face loss. So to reduce these losses and to increase the efficiency, we use gears, because gears reduce the production of vibrations. Now there are different types of gears which we use for the transmission of power from one shaft to another shaft. Some of these are: the first gear is spur gear. What is this spur gear? Spur gear is a type of gear in which the parallel shaft is used. That is, suppose this is one shaft and this is another shaft. Now if we want to transfer the motion or the transfer of power from this shaft to this shaft, then at that place the spur gear will be used for the transmission of power. And what is the benefit of using spur gear? The spur gear is a type of gear in which, this is, suppose this is the spur gear, in which this portion, in which this is a type of gear in which the teeth are, this is the axis of the gear, in which the teeth are in parallel with the axis of the gear. So in this spur gear, the teeth which are there on the gear will always be parallel to the axis of the gear, and thus the transmission of power will be done through parallel teeth. It has one disadvantage, this type of gear, and this disadvantage is that if the any type of axial force is applied on the mechanism, suppose we have this mechanism in which this spur gear is used, where this axis will be parallel to the teeth of the gear. Now if axial force is applied, axial force means the force which act along the axis. If axial force is applied either from this way or from this way, then this gear will definitely have the tendency to slip from this place and to lose its place. So for the axial loading, or if loading is done axially on gears, then spur gear is not considered to be good gear. So spur gear is a gear which is used for the parallel axis transmission of power from one shaft to another shaft. Here the axis of gear will always be parallel, and the tooths will always be parallel to the axis of the gear. And this gear has disadvantage that if the axial force is also applied on this gear, then this gear will lose its position and this mechanism will not work as it is supposed to be done. Now another gear is the helical gear. What is this helical gear? Helical gear also work on the same position where this spur gear can work, it also have parallel shaft. Now suppose this is one shaft and this is another shaft. This is one shaft first and this is second shaft, and these are the gears connected. To transmit the power we use the helical gears. Now the difference which lies between this helical gear and spur gear is that this is the helical gear. Now what the difference will lie in this is the axis of the gear. Now the difference will lie on the type of tooths which are cut in these gears. Here the tooths which are cut on these gears is parallel to the axis, but here they are not parallel. They are at some angle which is known as helix angle. So here the tooths which are cut will be along some axis. So due to the inclined tooths, these are called helix gear. Here tooths are not parallel to the axis. These tooths will be along helix angle. So this is the difference. Now what benefit does this arrangement have over this? The benefit is that if any axial loading or any force which is applied along the axis, this is the axis, if any force is applied along the axis, then this gear will not lose its position, or it will not move from its position. Instead it will transmit the power. So if there is no axial force on the mechanism, then spur gear is used. But if there is any axial load, then the use of helical gear is preferred, as here tooths are not parallel to the axis but inclined at helix angle. Now if we understand it better, then suppose this portion is like this, and this is the axis. Here the tooths are parallel to this axis, but in this case, if this is the portion, this is the axis, then here at some angle the tooths will be cut on this gear. So this is the difference. Now another type of gear is the bevel gear. It is a type of gear in which here the axes are parallel, but it is the type of gear in which unparallel and intersecting axes are used. What this line means? This line means here the axes are parallel but they will not intersect at any place. But these type of gears are used where the axes are unparallel and they intersect. Now this is one axis and this is another axis, and they will definitely going to meet at this place if we produce them backward. And how this bevel gear is used? This bevel gear is used in this manner, in which one portion, suppose first I'll make it, this is the bevel gear arrangement, this. Now if here this axis, if we produce it backward, it will meet at this place with this axis. Now here the axes are not meeting, they are parallel, but here unparalleled axes are present, and to transmit the power through in these mechanisms we use bevel gears. In this bevel gear, if we make another diagram, then this portion is inclined. Let me make this type of diagram for this also. This spur gear has a uniform thickness, suppose T, all over this gear. This is a T thickness, means this circle and this circle are at same distance from to each other at all the places. But in this bevel gear, this outer circle will be of larger diameter than this inner circle. So in this bevel gear, the teeth are cut not uniformly, but they are at some angle or they are inclined. Here the teeth are cut at some angle, but here they are inclined. So this bevel gear is a gear which is used for the transmission of power for unparalleled and intersecting axis. Here in this bevel gear, the thickness is not uniform in all of the gear. That is, in this spur gear and helical gear, the thickness of this gear is uniform. That is, it is same at all the point of the gear. But here the outer circle is of larger diameter and the inner circle is of smaller diameter, and the transmission of power takes place. Here these tooths are inclined. These tooths are inclined and thus are used to transmit the power. Also, we have in this bevel gear, we have one more advantage, is that they can be used for transmission of heavy power or heavy loading. This spur gear is used for the transmission of low loading or for less loading mechanisms. This helical gear is used for medium type of loading, but this bevel gear is used for heavy power transmission. Also, we have another type of gear, and this is known as worm gear. What is this worm type of gear? It is a type of gear in which unparalleled and unintersecting axis is used. What does this means? Here the axes are intersecting at some point C, but in this worm gear the axes are unparalleled and unintersecting. Suppose, and the diagram is as follows. This gear has axis in this manner, and another gear will be of this structure. It will have teeth in this way and its axis is like this. Now this axis is on first plane and this axis is on second plane. From the diagram it seems that both these axes will meet, but no, they will not meet because they are not on the same plane. Suppose this is one piece of paper and I draw a line here and I draw another line here, then definitely they will meet. But this line is on one plane and this line is on another plane, so these lines will not meet. That is why the axes are unintersecting. So at the place where the axes are unintersecting and unparalleled, we use worm gears. It is also known as worm and worm gear set. So this is a general introduction about gear. What is it? What is inside it? The gear is a device which is used to transmit power from one shaft to another shaft. It is used for the places where distance between the two shafts is small and the use of another kind of power transmission device is restricted. Also, it is used for the control of speed from one shaft to another shaft. We can either increase or decrease the speed of transmission of shaft. Also, it is used and benefit for the vibration damping. That is, it reduces the vibration which are produced between the shaft and thus help to reduce loss of power. There are many types of gears such as spur gear. These are used for parallel axis shaft where no axial force is applied, because if axial force is applied then these definitely will not do as they are supposed to do their work. This gear will move from its place. Another type of gear is helical gear, in which the tooths which are cut on the gear are at some angle, that is helix angle. So what they do, they try to make better joint or better connections between the two gears, so that the axial force is unable to separate them apart and thus help to transmit the power. Another type of gear is bevel gear. This type of gear is used for the unparalleled and intersecting axis transmission of power, where the axis of shaft is unparalleled and unintersecting. Generally it is 90° or it can be more than 90°. So for those mechanisms we use bevel gear. And another type of gear is worm gear. Here the axes are unparalleled and unintersecting. So this is a general about gears. Thank you.